We expect our champions to be generation-defying, one of the best teams of all time, whereas sometimes you just get a team that's the best in the league.
It's not enough, Ro. It's not enough.
You don't need to be faster than a tiger. You just need to be faster than all the other campers, Rog. That's how Liverpool have won the league.
We back! Oh, like Alexander Ovechkin. And what did we just watch? A weekend, honestly, just spent killing time to find out who dies at the end of the White Lotus, in which the Ewoks of Fulham blew 3 goals in 40 minutes past your champions-elect Liverpool. Lost for just the second time this season. Can they do a Duke? Oh, they will not let it slip, mostly because, well, Arsenal were well and truly moised in a 1-1 droppage at the points in their farewell to Goodison Park. Manchester United, at City, lolloped through a snoozing stalemate, which one pundit called the Premier League equivalent of a Mike Tyson against Jake Paul fight. Villa dropped Nottingham Forest in quite a ferocious rumble, cut of pure, unbridled dreams. And sad Southampton fell through the relegation moon door at a record-breaking early pace. That's not nothing, that's an achievement. They came, they saw, they sank without a trace. And to break it all down, it's my humble honour to welcome, from an undisclosed location in the bowels of Harrogate, Yorkshire, to my friend, Crown Prince of Terry's Chocolate Orange, it's Mr. Rory Smith.
Rog, the fact that you still have some Terry's Chocolate Orange tells me that you are Terry's Chocolate Orange in wrong.
Oh, that's so fascinating. Is there a right way? I had told you I'm going to hoard this and have a tiny nibble every single podcast we do and make it last.
We're going to get that deal. We're going to get that sponsorship deal, Rog. That's all that matters now. Between now and the end of the season, we're going to get Big Terry's on board. If
it kills me, we will do it, because we need to eat this chocolate orange, if only to avoid the scurvy, Raw. And we are scurvy-fearing because, well, it's a pretty dark world out there. All that is old is new again. And I want to start by obviously addressing the big news the whole world's talking about this week. A headline ripped from the BBC News that hormonal Harris Hawk terrorises bald men for weeks in English village before its final capture. I'm sure you followed this one, dear listener, so I don't need to tell you, but for the few of you who've been living under a rock, essentially, the stories of, quote, a hormonal hawk that's terrorised over 50 people in Flamstead, Hertfordshire, it's just north of London. It's been swooping down, clawing their heads from behind, quote, stopping the mail from being delivered, preventing children from playing in the streets, hospitalising one resident, leaving others drenched in blood. In particular, there's a line from the story in the BBC telling of this. The hawk is delighted in terrorising bald men by dive-bombing their vulnerable noggins until it was finally captured. I mean, this is my worst nightmare, by the way. I often have nightmares about just walking down the street and being just dive-bombed by a hormonal hawk, Raw. The nice thing is, this is a Harris hawk. It was ultimately captured by a man named Steve Harris, and I think he should do a 23andMe. I'm pretty sure the two are related. Rob, can you make sense of this? Because this bird brain brute, again, another line from the story, had attacked dozens of bald men to such an extent that many villagers had started to wear bike helmets while jogging. Help us out, Rob.
Surely if you're wearing a big shiny helmet, that just makes everybody look bald, doesn't it? I suppose it depends if you're a matte bald or a gloss bald.
I think the idea is just to have everybody look bald and confuse the hawk. It's like a scene from the Thomas Crown affair where everybody suddenly looks like the art thief in the heist. Just confuse the hawk. We're all bald. Who are you coming for now, you bastard?
I've got a lot of questions about this. One
Please.
is, why would a hawk that is terrorising bald men prevent children playing on the street? Are there a lot of bald children? If so, that suggests there's another problem that maybe is more interesting.
Interesting. All the kids have got a Kirkes nowadays there in Flemingly, Hertfordshire, whatever the town.
We'll get to the location, Rog. Question number 2.
Yeah.
In what way, what do we mean by hormonal? Is this a sexual thing?
Yeah, I think it's the breeding season, and that hawk wants to mate with one thing and one thing only.
That's bald men.
Daddy wants, yes.
But question number 3, and it's not really a question.
We're irresistible now after Walton Goggins has made bald men sexy. Go on.
So I would say that the link to this story that I read was in the New York Post, which I believe is one of the more upstanding New York publications.
Yeah, probably, I'd say top 100.
So I would suggest that Flamstead is not a place. And I'm yet to be convinced that Hertfordshire's real, to be perfectly honest. I think what happens quite frequently is that the American news media mates up places in Britain to mock us. And it strikes me that Flamstead, Hertfordshire, That sounds like something out of Bridget Jones.
I've got to tell you, this is real. This was in the BBC. I'll tell you how real it was. Even the Independent, that fine Miguel Delaney fearing publication, was reporting on this. When I read it, I had two thoughts, Raw, for you. Number one, is this proof that we are living in times of the apocalypse, when like birds are no longer scared of humanity and are coming? We're the prey now, Raw. We are the prey.
The bird and the man will lie together. Yep,
yes, fine. Exactly. Yep. Dogs and cats lying together. Is England now back in the Middle Ages is really where I was driving with this. Because this story, yes, it's in 2025, but I do believe if there was a town crier going, oh yay, hormonal hawk terrorising villagers, it does sound like something from the 15th century, doesn't it?
It does, but then the question there, Rog, is have we ever left, I would say.
Oh my God.
Is England back in the Middle Ages?
Did we ever really leave? We will save that for our other podcast. Raw and I have The Rest is History, which is quite popular. But Raw, I want you to protect us, dear listeners, the herd. First, remember when we're talking about Hawks, past an email that wrote, first the Hawks came for the Bulls and I didn't speak out because I wasn't a bike helmet wearing bull person. I don't know why the Hawk harboured hatred for the follically challenged. But it does seem to me it's always the Bulls that get it in our society.
My dog enjoys a cafe, and he was once lying on the floor, quite a dark wooden floor of a cafe, and I don't know how to put this delicately, he's a black dog, and the floor was dark, and the cafe was it wasn't particularly well lit, and a woman of a certain age stumbled over him and sort of kicked him in the stomach, and she didn't mean anything by it, and he was fine, but ever since, he does kind of attack women of pensionable age.
Women of pensionable age? Is that what they call them?
A little bit. Occasionally sort of nips them. Yeah, doesn't like them at all. So ultimately, at some point, a bald man has bothered this hawk, and now the hawk is wreaking its revenge.
You think this hawk was in a cafe, minding its own business, just having a little double espresso one day, and then a bull tormented it?
I'm guessing that in Flamstead, Hertfordshire,
those parts probably quite Tony, if we're being honest.
Yeah, it is. It will be. It's commuter belt London. I'm guessing that some sort of arrogant bald man has taunted the hawk, and now the hawk has thought, right, I'm having you.
Bulls, you do it to yourselves, is what Rory's saying.
I don't know. That makes me sound like I'm victim blaming.
I know. My message is help us. Help us. Do not let us stand alone in this moment. Where's our allies? By the way, Crystal Palace fans listening, you are probably quite used to this kind of thing. You used to have Kayla the Eagle swoop around Selhurst Park before games. I met Kayla, had her on my hand actually pre-game once. Proper terrifying. But maybe this is what the Premier League needs for the rest of the season to make it a little bit more exciting. Just let loose, Raw, a wild hormonal bird of prey, and let it just have its way with some fans, Squid Game style, before kickoff.
I don't think anyone's in a position to argue that football would be improved, especially kind of end of season, sunshine, May football, would be improved just by any predator being released on a pitch, to be honest. Panther, just whatever. Leopard. It's all fair game. It just kind of improves things.
God, we're just trying to help. We're just trying to help the end of the season, which so much seems to be already sorted. So get on it, Premier League.
At some point, Gerard Piqué will try it in the Kings League. You know he will.
Yeah, he'll be like sitting there in a meeting, be like, more ball gaslighting. That's what the Kings League needs to go next level. But now we've got to move away from threats to baldness, our other podcast, and talk about the football, because there is so bloody much. I do want to start. And if you are bald and you are listening, just stay away from Greater London for the next week until we're all completely safe. I want to raise a third first Michelob Ultra of the day to mighty Wrexham, who incredibly, front of a watching Ryan Reynolds, beat Burton Albion 3-0 on Saturday, stretching the gap between them in second place and third place Wycombe Wanderers to 6 points, which means the town's automatic promotion fate is now in their own hands for the first time this season. A promotion, I don't want to get ahead of myself, but it would be their third straight. I think before this, Swansea City and 3 promotions in 4 years in the late 1970s, climbing to the old First Division. But that's the closest anyone's ever gotten to what Wrexham have put themselves in a position to achieve. And I don't care what you say about the sudden built-in advantages the club have had. To emerge from League One is profoundly difficult. To do it at the first try is mind-blowing. Particularly for manager Phil Parkinson. to retain a calm hand on the tiller, to keep his head when all about them are losing theirs. All of that spotlight, all the opportunity for the players to lose their focus, the new players coming in to transform what was working, to ego it up. But he is doing it. Second tier, now edging ever closer, one level from the Premier League. We know the gulf between the Championship and the Premier League is enormous. We know the challenges that lie ahead will be like wrestling an alligator in a swamp. But for the club, the fans, and above all the region, hard-hit region of North Wales, what we're witnessing, it's more than football. It's honestly regional economic development. It's regional economic alchemy. I've got huge respect for the joy, the meaning, and the humility with which it's been accomplished. Godspeed, just a ray of light in an all too dark world. Raw. I mean, you can tell how joyous it is because in a very cynical Britain, there's still not really been a backlash other than the teams that they are playing and beating. It's still a warm and wonderful story in a country that lives to tear things down.
Yeah, that is our national pastime. Hawks attacking the bald and destroying romance. Those are the two things Britain just does really well in the 21st century. I think there is a little bit of a sense of the underdog story of Wrexham has worn off a little bit in Britain. I think that's probably fair to say. There is an acceptance that they are no longer seen as, you can't have that kind of backing and see yourselves as the oppressed anymore. But I also think there's a recognition that, a lot of fans have to deal with an ownership that they're not necessarily that comfortable with. It might be a nation state. It might be, an American hedge fund. It might be some venture capitalists. It might be something you've never really heard of. It might be some foreign investor who has some sort of nefarious ulterior motive, or you fear they do. It might be a domestic investor who you kind of hate. I think in that...
Those are the only choices, by the way.
They are literally... There are no good options.
And by the way, we all drive Toyotas now, Raw, but carry on.
Exactly. You can get like a Texan car dealer and that feels okay, but you're still a little bit uneasy about it. To be honest, I think for a lot of fans, there is an awareness that Ryan Reynolds and Rob McElhenney are kind of the least worst option. I mean, you know why they want the club. You know why they are involved. They're broadcasting it on Hulu every, once a year over however many weeks. Like, that is why they are involved with Wrexham. That seems like a fair enough trade-off to me. And to be honest, I think to the majority of fans, you get that. Yeah, okay, it's content. And if the content aligns with what the fans want, then what's the problem?
But man, they are having a blast. I can tell you that. They are just, the club is, you're right, the underdog has worn off. I mean, to have a team propelled by Stephen Fletcher, that man in a sports bra is proper terrifying. James McLean, human wonders, just the fabric of the team. It's no longer scrappy footballers having their lives changed. It's, pretty phenomenal experienced warriors and also young talents, Ollie Rathbone and the like coming on in and becoming quite a clenched fist. I'd say Rob and Rory are absolutely having a blast in great wonder. This next challenge that lies ahead, I don't want to get ahead of myself. It's not been clinched yet. All I say is that the Championship is just an enormous mountain that if they get there to lie ahead of them, that is going to be deeply transformative for the region, but will transform that club even more into remarkable, potentially unrecognisable ways. But to the football, let's start with the exclamation point result of the weekend. Probably Arsenal's best result of the season. Fulham 3, Liverpool Football Club 2. Yes, Raw, league leading Liverpool, 11 points clear at the top of the table. I think they needed 13 from their last 8 games to clinch, came down to London. Looking a little mortal, just survived the midweek Merseyside derby, oh my God, if only Beto had scored, we'd have more of a feeling of a close run thing, but still unbeaten in the last 26 Premier League games before this one, unbeaten on the road the entire campaign. Fulham too had a tough couple of weeks, I think more losses than wins, eliminated from the FA Cup in the quarter-final round. Liverpool, they were tender. Started slowly. Canate really playing like a loose tooth in those opening 50 minutes. But out of nowhere, a goal all the more stunning because of the bright sunlight in which it was played. McAllister pounced on the ball, bullied the much bigger Berger off it. And then from about 20 yards, just unleashed. Just a stunning... I mean, he couldn't have hit it harder or if he was using one of those New York Yankee torpedo bats. In that second, I don't know how you felt, but I got a lovely text from my friend John Green. My friend number 1 in the New York Times bestseller list, John Green. And he texted me and he said, starting to think we might win the league.
Hubris. That's the problem here. Yeah, it felt very much like a settling moment. I think it felt like, okay, they've got an early goal. Fulham's a difficult away game. There was no, it stood out on the fixture list after the international break as one of the kind of question marks, the points where you thought, okay, maybe this is where things go off the rails a little bit. McAllister kind of takes matters into his own hands, scores the sort of goal that Liverpool don't score that often necessarily, goals from range. You think, actually, it's spring, there's sunshine, this is pretty much a procession now. And that, Rog, that is when they get you.
Yeah, it's true. And they being Fulham, who, I have to say, showed a lot of tenacity in this one. Berger roamed right through the Liverpool gut, found Wobes, his ball bumbled by Curtis Jones out of position in the Trent full-back space, maybe showing he really is Trent's replacement after all. And the ball dropped to Sessegnon, who in his first league start at the Cottage in nearly 6 years. That blew me away, lashed intuitively. Third goal in 5 games for the one-time star boy, now thriving again. But Fulham not done. Weak link Andy Robertson inexplicably slapped the ball out the back, straight to Wobes, who was in a fine position in the penalty area. A stunning, charitable creativity by Andy Robbo. He also then headed the ball back to Iwobi when he'd blown the initial chance, let him smack home a deflector. But it would get worse for Liverpool. 5 minutes later, rocked from a corner. Iwobi, God bless him, punted the ball into the air. It was very Aussie rules. Liverpool totally paralysed. Muniz and Van Dijk underneath it. And I've got to say, Muniz absolutely pants Virgil, flicking the ball behind him, spinning to thrash home. Liverpool roar, concede 3 goals in the first half for the first time in the Premier League since that 7-2 Aston Villa beatdown of 2020, of which ballads were written. Roar, I've got to ask you, where's this Liverpool been all season? Because I love it. And is it complacency? Is it having nothing to play for? Is it exhaustion? Is it a grinding season, mental and physical? To make it make sense?
Yeah, a little of all the above, to be honest. I think you can look at the 3 goals, and maybe this is my red-tinted spectacles, and say there is a slightly freakish element about all of them. The ball kind of ricochets off Curtis Jones's knee at the exact right pace to fall exactly to Ryan Sessegnon. That there are 3 mistakes, as you say. Well, 2 mistakes and one little bit of misfortune from Andy Robertson in the space of about 10 seconds for the second. And then the third, I'm not Alex Iwobi. I don't want to cast aspersions, but I think he didn't mean to do that. I'm not sure that's what he was trying to do, just launch the ball really high in the air and see what happens.
As one of Britain's leading under-7 coaches, can you tell me what you will have seen that tactic? You will have trained that tactic?
And bear in mind, there's an element. Look, under-7 football, Rog, there is definitely a competitive advantage in just booting it in the air and seeing what happens. But I don't think Alex Iwobi was trying to do that. So there is a little bit. It sounds like making excuses. There is a little bit of misfortune in the fact that they conceded all 3 goals. I feel like if you played that game again, those 3 incidents could very easily have gone a different way. But it was also indicative of what Liverpool were doing. They were inviting pressure from Fulham. They were crumbling under Fulham's pressure. It's always difficult to say who's got the agency, who's making things happen. It felt like Liverpool were complicit in their own demise to a large extent, that Fulham were full of energy and dynamism and all that stuff, but Liverpool offered very little resistance. Kanate in particular really struggled, lightweight in midfield. I think there's fatigue in there. I think there is a bit of complacency in there. There's a lack of drive, I suppose. Maybe after the week's results involving Everton, Liverpool felt they were kind of home and dry. And it's also been coming. Liverpool haven't played well for a month, 6 weeks. And admittedly, they had 2 of those weeks off. But yeah,
Liverpool haven't played well since August. That's what we're all saying now. It wasn't them, bro. It was never them. We'll get to the title in 1 minute. I will say, God bless John Green. He sent me a second text at half-time saying, maybe Trent was mission critical after all. But in all honesty, it is fascinating to see the number of rubberneckers just piling on. Liverpool need up to 6 players coming in are all the headlines right now. They're winning the bloody title. Let them have some joy. We'll talk about that in a moment. By the way, the new players always at the top of the list, and I love this. Fulham's Anthony Robinson, that great American, to replace Andy Robbo. Half-time, Liverpool fans wondering seriously if they could make 8 or 9 substitutions. The performance was that abysmal. Liverpool's vault in midfield had made 9 passes 2 attackers in that first half, 3 were backwards. No changes at half-time, though. Fulham fans utterly ebullient. Probs wondering, honestly, if I were a Fulham fan, I'd be like, why are we doing this in this game? And we showed none of this in just wilting out of the FA Cup final the week before. That's how football works. Slot ultimately did make changes. They did work. Bradley and Diaz combining. 80 minutes left. Liverpool tried to up the tempo, but Fulham would not break. Massive win for them, chasing Champions League football. We seem to say this every week about a different team who are dreamy of it. But they really are. 8th place, 4 points off 5th. First win against Liverpool at home for 13 long years. League leaders, they roar. 26-game match unbeaten league run ends. First away loss of the season. First loss since September, I think, which is remarkable. 11 points clear still, 7 games to go. I think they need, 11 points to clinch. I'm just noting, Raw, this is just objective. The 8 games to go last season under Jurgen Klopp is when things started to go totally pear-shaped for you, Liverpool. Not that I'm trying to manifest it. Not that I'm suggesting it will happen, but did I just manifest it?
Some of us, Rog, have been saying throughout that this isn't necessarily done. That there is a pathway to Liverpool throwing this completely. It's a very unlikely pathway. Partly because it relies on Arsenal being perfect. But it's not unimaginable that maybe they draw at home to Tottenham. Tottenham can give anybody a game when they want to. Maybe they lose at Chelsea. That's not a terrible result. And then suddenly you have Arsenal at home, and that game has things riding on it. The flip side, and this is definitely a fan clutching at straws, is that losing at Fulham, which always looked like a slightly tricky game, it looked like the sort of game that you had to be on it to win, as it were. That could serve as a kind of a kick up the backside. That Liverpool maybe needed a reminder that the Premier League will not just be handed to them, that it's not over, that they have to go and win it, and also to an extent that there are ways to win it. You can stumble over the line. Sometimes champions do stumble over the line. Doesn't mean it doesn't count. They're still champions, but you don't really want that to be the coda to your season. You want to go and claim the title. Liverpool now have 3 games left in April. Personally, I think if they win all 3 of those, that's probably it done, regardless of what else happens. They need to kind of go out and make a statement that they're not champions because everybody else fell apart. They need to go out and prove that they're champions because they're champions.
Next up for Slot's team, West Ham, who I think won at Anfield last in 1963. Then they've got relegations Leicester. But you've just hit upon the big picture debate, which is now descending upon this team in this social media age where you're only as good as your last 2 games, or what have you done for me lately is the mantra of football. Because to a large degree, Liverpool won the league almost a month ago, in effect. We have forgotten just how good they've been. And so this debate now about how will they be remembered. By the way, a reality given a huge dent by one of Liverpool's own, their former boy wonder striker turned slightly mealy-mouthed TV pundit. Michael Owen's claim midweek that the campaign was, quote, building into something really special until Slot's team exited the Champions League and the Carabao Cup final. Said it will still be special, but the caveat, the 2 defeats in 6 days would leave a bitter taste, which led to Arne Slot and Virgil van Dijk attacking that point of view. The debate right now is, was the title won by Liverpool, or was it because Arsenal and Manchester City both went on their individual marches of folly? Virgil said, let me understand it right. It's now not enough to only win the Premier League. And Roy, you know me, I'm not a nice man. I'm also an Everton fan, but I've got to say, part of me is Liverpool are stumbling now because they put themselves in such a place that they can afford to.
Yeah, well, there's always been a little bit of a double standard, hasn't there? And actually the best example of this is Ange Postecoglou. So you remember Postecoglou's first season at Spurs? And they had that amazing start. I think they were top after 10 games. He looked like he was making it look like the Premier League was easy. We were all talking about his emotional honesty, how refreshing it was to have an Australian in the lead. That was something we'd come to regret.
And while you're saying all that, I'm hearing in my head, I remember when you were driving in my car, speed so fast. Ange's arm felt so nice on our shoulder in those days, but go on.
And then, obviously, the second half of the season, a little bit less so. And by the end of that campaign, Ange Postecoglou wasn't quite under pressure, but there were question marks over him. There was a sense that Spurs' season had fallen apart. If Spurs had got the exact same points total and had the exact same results, but just in the other way round, there would have been a sense of, well, Ange's really building something, isn't he? There's a real momentum behind Tottenham, and I do think that Liverpool will suffer from that a little bit, because they won the title, or if they go on to win the title, which they still should. They will have won it in two kind of tranches. There was the tranche between October and November when they just kind of swatted everybody aside, and then there was that run January, February, where they had 5 really difficult games in 20 days or whatever, and they emerged with their lead enhanced rather than reduced. Those are the 2 ultimate tests that Liverpool passed to win the league. In many ways, they are the perfect champions for this season. Liverpool beating Everton in midweek, that was their 4th win in a row in the league, and over quite a long time. They are the only team to have won 4 games in a row in the Premier League this season. Nobody else has done it. They are the most consistent of a load of inconsistent teams because of the league's competitive balance. They have survived and endured and persevered better than anybody else. But you're right, there is now a sense of they're kind of not winning it the right way. They're not winning it well enough. And I can't work out whether that is partly because we've been set like a false bar by Manchester City in the last few years, and we expect our champions to be generation-defining, epoch-defining,
relentless terminators.
Like one of the best teams of all time. Whereas sometimes you just get a team that's the best in the league. That's all you need to be. You don't need to
not
be
enough, bro.
You don't need to be faster than a tiger. You just need to be faster than all the other campers, Rog. That's how Liverpool have won the league.
That's a man who loves his RVs speaking. Go on.
But I do wonder as well whether it's part of a broader trend in that we're really quick to deny anybody any credit for anything.
Or happiness. Why would you want anybody else to feel happy, bro? Genuinely, do I need my own campfire when I can piss on yours? I don't think that's actually a saying, but that's essentially the emotion.
It should be.
But the way you're framing it, it's not enough to win things in football. You got to win things in the right order. Ultimately, you got to do what Wolves have done. Lose all the first half of the games, and then just Crystal Palace, Raw, is the way to do it, right? Just go to the edge, almost fall over the precipice, and then just reel off, genuinely become a clenched fist in the back half of the season. That is ultimately, that's the right way to play football nowadays in the social media outrage age. If
you want to have a peaceful summer where everyone's happy, then yes. I do think there is an irony, though, that Liverpool have kind of got to this position having spent £14 million, something like that, on Federico Chiesa, who has played about 20. He's played for Liverpool as much in the Premier League this season as I have, right?
He's so cute, though.
He seems like a lovely man. I wish he'd play more.
He's so gorgeous.
Liverpool's 2 championships, if this one kind of... I'm still asterisking it. If this one gets over the line, Liverpool have won the title twice without really spending anything at all in the summer, which should really, to the fans, be a lesson that how much money you spend in the transfer market does not directly correlate to your league position the following season. That is obvious.
God, that's another lesson.
But Liverpool, I think, are going to have the best of both worlds now, because they should win the Premier League, and yet they still need to have a massive summer. So what more do you want? There's just so much content.
Raw, it is. Ultimately, this is what they are. They're just content harvesting machines. I do love Chiesa. He's like cuddly and cute. He's like Italian Rick Moranis when he like stumbles onto the field. It's like, whoa, what am I doing here? But essentially, to distill what you've just said, we always talk in football, you shouldn't score too early. What you're saying is you shouldn't wrap up the league victory, the league title. You should not win the title too early, is the moral we're taking from this.
Yeah, because people, as you said, people will forget how you got there. And all that is remembered is kind of the last couple of months where you're kind of drifting lazily to the summer as champions in waiting, champions elect. With Liverpool in this case, though, I would say you have to actually go and win it. They haven't won it yet. Until they have it.
Raw. Stop
then
it.
They
you
should...
tease me with this, with Chelsea. You're hoping, when I said Chelsea, well, somebody said on this show, Chelsea we could possibly be contenders. And you said, somebody else said, no, probably not. I hope that truth carries through. I hope you are seeing the future in the most wonderful ways. But I do love this. Ultimately, this is all about the great human motivation of reveling in the moment when someone's joy sticks like ashes in their throat. And talking of that, Manchester United 0. Manchester City, oh my God, this was a terrible football game. 0. The 196 and quite probably least exciting Manchester City derby of all time. These two quote, super clubs almost lumbering towards each other. If you've ever seen two enormous, I once saw two oil rig workers about 3 a.m. In a dive bar after shot decide that it was a good idea that they had a fist fight in aforementioned dive bar. Neither could land a punch. It was quite remarkable to watch, but for all the wrong human reasons. That's what I thought of as I watched this game. 13th place against 5th. It was also mid-table. City, hampered by the loss of Erling Haaland, ankle injury against Bournemouth, out I think 5 to 7 weeks. That could be pretty well the end of the season. Pep gave Kevin De Bruyne, perhaps sentimentally, almost certainly tactically, mistakenly, a start of the week it was announced he won't be offered a new contract for next season. We'll talk about that in one moment. But the game itself honestly felt like a Xerox of epic Manchester rumbles past United, attempting to suppress space, snap on the counter through their win back. City toiling to break United down without any real evidence, any true application. It was tame stuff. There's a Mary Oliver quote I thought about a lot, about what it must be like for both fans sets to watch this kind of football. She once wrote, "Someone I loved once gave me a box full of darkness. It took me years to understand that this too was a gift." I give that to you, Manchester fans. Just one shot on target by both teams in the first half. Foden limped off, being serenaded by United fans about his poor mum. Highlight of the second half, really, Diash making a sliding block with his testicles, giving it all up for the team. It was tough. I think there were power strikes. Marmouche, Ugarte traded them. But overall, Raw, it was very odd. I mean, this game is massive in profile globally, but it looked like it just emitted like a low-grade numbness. Two teams of body snatch footballers, white walkers really. United unable to score. Højlund, Xerxes, incredible statistic, 12 years since Alex Ferguson. United have had 19 strikers, so few fits in that 12-year period. Raw, this whole thing felt like two teams, two managers who honestly feared losing more than they wanted to win. Thus, the first 0-0 between these two teams since 2020.
Yeah, it felt a lot like two teams who just wanted this game out of the way, maybe this season to finish. Just a nice long lie down on a beach somewhere where they're not being bothered and made to play football. It was, numb is quite a good word, soulless. It felt kind of colourless, a little bit kind of insipid. Wasn't really... There wasn't the edge that you expect. There wasn't the fire and the frenzy of a derby. It felt like two teams who are kind of silhouettes of themselves, I suppose, it was the overall impression. And a game that is a silhouette of itself, because there was a point, reasonably long time ago now, where this was kind of the defining fixture in the Premier League. In fact, that spell between 2011 and 2014-15, maybe, that it was kind of the Manchester derby was the fixture. And then again, for a little bit of a flurry, 2018, 2019, these were the two. But now it's hard to see United might be in contention for Europe next season. They probably won't be, but they might be. City we expect to come back much quicker, much stronger, but they look like they are between projects. And it was very hard to feel anything about this game, really.
Anything. I mean, I will say the English media, God bless, after beating the crap out of Amorim, are now so desperately trying to project that they can see progress, that they can see signs of life, signs of organisation. What I saw was a sit-in protest by United fans to cap the day, protesting pretty well everything. Owners old, owners new. You know, the desire to get their club back. There's just anger at every single level. And for City, it was particularly sad, honestly, watching KDB at the end, after being unable to influence the game in a way that we've seen so many times. He went up to the City away fans. They serenaded him beautifully. He remained really in that moment as stoic as he's always been, which is ultimately fascinating to me, his approach to everything off the field. He announced he'll be leaving Manchester City this summer after 10 years. I think 19 trophies won. Final player left from the squad that Pep inherited when he arrived in 2015. It's been hard to watch him this season. He's really been a shadow of his usual self. But all the greats, all the incredible statistics. No player has assisted more goals, 117, created more chances, 827, than Kevin across the big leagues in European football since he arrived in 2015. He is a certified Premier League legend. I mean, the vision of him charging at pace, towards opponents' goals, having somehow escaped defenders, found a seam of space, slapping a perfectly weighted, almost a drone strike of a cross onto the foot of one of always 6 or 7 possible Manchester City goal scorers. That was what he was like at his peak. Seemed to be at his peak playing a completely different sport to everybody else on the field, almost telepathic. Yet at the same time, off the field, almost undermined by his lack of aura or lack of hype, lack of social media, anything. He's tried to have a signature haircut very late in his career, but his aura is almost cold and clinical. In a way, he's been very much an embodiment of modern Manchester City, who are also a very cold project. But where would you put him? Because now the discussion is, where does he rank for City? Where does he rank in the Premier League? And I fear that a little bit like Mo Salah, who also will be always seen as a great, but will not be in the conversation for greatest for reasons we discussed last week, which are ridiculous. I feel like he won't get his true due.
Yeah, there is an element of anything that's now is scotched automatically, and I think something that is essentially tribal, a desire to kind of downplay other people's joy, Rog, as previously discussed in various episodes over the course of the season. I wonder whether De Bruyne suffers a little bit for not being a character. I think that's definitely true. The player he reminds me of in terms of legacy most is probably Paul Scholes, who was in many people's minds, was the most talented of the kind of the great Manchester United generation around the turn of the century, like 2000, 2005. Scholes was very quiet off the pitch, never really said anything, very much a kind of unassuming character, and then he got on the pitch and he was a magician. There's an element of that about De Bruyne. Both ginger. I don't know whether that's a factor.
You've got to ask a hawk. You've got to ask a horny hawk if there's a connection there.
But to me, De Bruyne deserves to be regarded as certainly one of the greatest Premier League midfielders of all time, one of the greatest Premier League players of all time. He has been a pleasure to watch at his peak. The one other thing that I do think costs him a little bit of his kind of individual recognition is that all of City's success is automatically credited to Pep. That's the truth of it. That you can't have. It's very difficult to have, because it's hard to hold two things in your imagination, your consciousness at any one time. You can't have this visionary manager who is the sole architect of everything his team does, who has this style of football that is now being aped and mimicked across the Premier League, across the world, who has all of these ideas, who is given credit for all of the kind of the brilliance and the success of that team, and then say, well, actually, this incredible playmaker, he's the real difference. Those two things can't really be true at once. So I think in a way, as Guardiola's credit has mounted, as his star has risen, in some way it's cast all of his players into shadow a little bit. Maybe not Erling Haaland. There's always a sense that Erling Haaland sort of sits outside the Guardiola system. But certainly De Bruyne, I think, is seen as being, if he'd had a different manager and won in exactly the same way, and played in exactly the same way, and got exactly the same numbers, the same goals, the same assists, the same chances created, all that stuff, I think he would be seen as a far more compelling case as the best Premier League player of all time. Because he's seen as just a foot soldier, because it's been kind of perceived that he's just carrying out Pep's instructions, I think in a way that diminishes his kind of the brightness of his star a little bit.
Because Pep is the sun around which all of the other planets spin there. That is true. And by the way, KDB, no doubt one of many summer departures that will be occurring at Manchester City. Pep said about KDB, he's, quote, one of the greatest we've ever seen. His assists, his goals, his vision in the final third. It's so difficult to replace. What he's done for the past decade has been outstanding. Pep also said there will be a statue of KDB outside of Manchester City Stadium. I do want to just throw out there, Raw, I think it should be made out of real carrots that grow like out of his head, like one of those kids' what were they called, chia pets, just like constantly sprouting carrots. Don't you think that would be beautiful?
There has to be some sort of like flourish of flame red hair, otherwise what's the point?
Oh, God bless. Get on it, Man City. Truth is, KDB is one of the greatest footballers the Premier League has ever seen. I actually interviewed him, I think, after his first season at City, second season maybe. And he was very, in person, he was very, very funny. At the end of it, I shot a selfie video where I just said, hey, America, just two guys hanging out, 11 goals and 27 assists between the two of us. And he just, God, his little face lit up. He loved it. I mean, he was in person. He is a very warm, deeply, deeply intelligent, very empathetic, a sensitive man. And Godspeed. It'll be fascinating, really fascinating to see what he does next. Come to Everton, KDB. Aston Villa 2, Nottingham Forest 1. Behold, your Midlands derby. West Midlands against East Midlands. Choose your fighter. Two clubs separated by, it's like 40-ish miles, but both steaming into seasons that are like made of Minecraft movie box office dreams. Villa in the Champions League quarter-finals this week. Incredible. The Villa of Marcus Rashford. Joke doing the rounds that Rashford left an obscure relegation-threatened team for a Champions League juggernaut. Forest gunning for the Champions League themselves next season. Both teams in the FA Cup semi-final. Who knows? This could have been a rehearsal for the actual FA Cup final, which I love. Villa's squad so deep. Made 8 changes. Whole new back 4. Forest having their best season in the generation since they last won the league in 1978. The game started with Tielemans scooping for the sensational Morgan Rogers. If you've not seen this goal, find it, because it's like a Marvin Gaye of a first touch. It's that sensual rifle finish for his 13th goal of the season. Second goal within 2 minutes. Maatsen turning Yates inside out, rolled the ball to Donyell Marlon for his second in 2 games. And behold, Unai Emery's latest trick, one of many he's pulled, doing something that I believe was considered impossible, almost getting value for money in the January transfer window.
Yeah, absolutely. They played it really smartly. Villa are effectively mortgaged to the hilt in terms of their squad. They desperately need Champions League football. They've spent a huge amount of money. Occasionally you will hear Aston Villa fans complaining that the PSR rules are fixed against them. There is no actual evidence for this. Villa have spent loads. But 2 really smart bits of business in January. Signing Marcus Rashford and particularly Marco Asensio on loan. But that has kind of obscured Donyell Marlon a little bit, who was another really astute signing, £20 million, which is a lot of money, but not really a lot of money, from Borussia Dortmund. A player who had something to prove. I think they probably wouldn't have signed Marlon if they'd known they could get Asensio and Rashford. But as it turns out, Villa now have this incredible suite of attacking options, and as they kind of reach the crunch end of the season, still in the Champions League, still in the race to get back into the Champions League, they will need all of those options fit and firing and rotating, and Emery is doing that masterfully.
Champions League, yeah, having a laugh, sang the Villa fans to third place Nottingham Forest, which was a choice. Forest kept things, I've got to say, very, very nervy in a wide-open second half, pressed much higher up the field. Jack Grealish's stunt double, Jota swiveled a shot past Martinez. Should have actually had a second goal awarded to him just for having some argy-bargy with Martinez later in the game. But Forest, now shorn of the iconic Chris Wood, and also his replacement, Awoniyi, had 19 shots, but only 3 on target. It was frantic, it was bold. In the 91st minute, was it Murillo who thundered one off the bar from 30 yards out? It was sweaty, it was nervy. Villa held on. They are now 6 in the league, 7 straight wins, travel to a Champions League quarter-final. Aston Villa at the Parc des Princes to play PSG. Emery said post-game, we are motivated, excited, but they are the favourites. Raw, seeing how deep, honestly, seeing how fresh Aston Villa now look, it's remarkable. They couldn't, could they, Raw?
I'm tempted to say not. It feels to me like they're slightly unfortunate to run into the one of the really big elite European teams that are kind of banging form. PSG are flying. They've just been crowned French champions. It's been really dramatic, very tense. They have this kind of attack that is full of pace and verve and imagination in Desiree Doué, Bradley Barcola, Khvicha Kvaratskhelia, my idol and hero, and obviously Ousmane Dembele.
Tell us about his cell phone again, Ro.
He's a man who has a smashed cell phone, like me, and that's what we kind of bonded over when I met him in Naples a couple of years ago. I take all credit for his greatness. And they've got Ousmane Dembele, who's probably the most informed player in Europe at the moment. So PSG do have that sense about them that maybe this is their time. But they will not be looking at Villa and thinking this is the easy route to the semi-finals. They will be looking at Villa and thinking they have an incredibly deep squad. Really, it's a really nice balance of kind of youth and experience. They've got a stadium that will be a roiling cauldron for, the biggest European night that's been there for 40 years. They've got players who've got a point to prove, and they've got a manager, former PSG manager, who is really good at European competition. So my instinct is still PSG just, but I think it'll be really tight.
Oh, God bless Unai Emery and his motivation. As John Oliver says, spite is the rocket fuel of human motivation. Oh, God bless Villa fans. I wish you well. We will talk more about that and every European game on European nights, which will come out tomorrow. And one of the games will be about this team. Tottenham 3, Southampton, oh God bless, RIP 1. A battle between two teams, yes, at the bottom of the Premier League. Saints historically bad by every measure. Spurs somehow feel worse, suffering the ignominy of 16th place. We said Big 16 clubs, right? Doesn't have quite the same ring as the Big 6, but God bless. They'd already lost to Ipswich and Leicester at home. They had the opportunity to do the relegation treble here, which is something that only Everton seem to do. Rubberneckers, though, would be disappointed. This game, honestly, effectively a training exercise for Spurs, strolling around parking cones dressed in pink. Brennan Johnson, kind of cool game, with a brace inside 42 minutes. And that was that. We pulled one out for Southampton, earliest team to be relegated in Premier League history. 25 defeats on the season. Team who came up under Russell Martin, tried to play front foot football, but without the calibre of players that they could have hoped to survive with in the Premier League. Vini, Vidi, Vici, which I believe they saw. They beat Everton somehow twice. Manager Ivan Juric fired. He was honestly out there quicker than Morgan Wallen. God bless their team and their fans who were singing throughout this one. Que sera, sera, we're going to Coventry. A deeply gallows humour not shared by Spurs fans who had a huge demo in the run-up to the game in the streets around the stadium, demanding the exit of club head honcho Dan Levy, chanting, I like this actually, can Beyonce play up front? Referring to the transfer deadline day announcement that the Cowboy Carter Tour would be playing Tottenham Hotspur Stadium this summer. Raw, I want to ask, you've already touched upon him in this one. Poor Ange Postecoglou. Honestly, at this point, I mean, it's like anguish Postecoglou looking at him. He's the sole spokesperson, as he pointed out, for this club. The level of suffering he has been left to flail with. It's like Ten Hagian. It's like reeking Game of Thrones. He's just left out there. Levels of pain, levels of agony. Him being asked by English journalists about specific coaches who could replace him. Him talking about fans bullying him, holding up cell phones, trying to bait him into a social media clip. Him cupping his ear to his own fans to celebrate a goal that was then, oh my God, vawed off. Just a human agony. It's like watching a bear be baited in like medieval circuses, Raw. I mean, how do you understand this? It's gone to me like his suffering. Human beings should not be left to flail like this in torment, shattered dreams. Really a sweet, naive man left there like a heat shield.
Yeah, it feels cruel now, and I think the cruelty is kind of enhanced by the fact that we all kind of know how this story ends. I don't think there's any world in which Ange Postecoglou is Spurs manager next season. It feels like what was once a really exciting, kind of fresh experiment has run its course, and that's a real shame. I really liked Ange at the start. I've got to admit, I think he's not. Him. But do you not think that he's not necessarily? He's had a bad hand, and I think he's played it quite badly. The bit where I lost faith in Ange was in the midst of this season's kind of full-on decline. The Spurs have been okay now for a little bit. They're winning games. They're beating Southampton when they have to beat Southampton. They're all right. They've got through to the quarterfinals in the Europa League. They probably won't win it, but they should get a semi-final. You never know. But the bit where I lost faith in him was when he was doing all those interviews after another defeat, and Mickey van der Ven's leg had fallen off again, and Christian Romero had accidentally been buried alive, and there was all this stuff happening, and he was giving these really kind of grumpy interviews, staring at the floor, bristling and sort of recoiling at the nerve of somebody who's just doing their job, kind of asking him questions. And I understand that those questions must be irritating. I understand that whole encounter, that whole experience must be in some way like really grating for a coach. But at the same time, you have to use them to sell yourself to your fan base. And I know a lot of Spurs fans who, in the course of those 2 or 3 months at the start of the year when things were really bad and Ange was staring at his shoes, that was when they turned. They thought, look, I think prior to that, a lot of people had been like, we want Ange to succeed, but we are worried that it's not going to happen. And I think at the end of that spell, because he'd done such a bad job of selling himself, as though he thought he was above selling himself, a lot of people were like, well, all right, we don't want Ange to succeed now, and thankfully, he's not.
Yeah, just watching him flail in purgatory, which is kind of where he is when he's looking at his shoes. He knows, we know that he knows that we know, and it's just a human agony that, I mean, it's almost too precious for this world. Big Ange to me, and I do understand the football has been naive. He's not going to change, mate. I understand Spurs fans' frustration, but just watching him be humiliated by journalists, press conference after press conference at this point. I mean, asking him about individual managers who are going to replace him is kind of like, trying to harvest someone's organs while they're still alive. And it's he looks like the lone piece of driftwood in a sea of misery, just bobbing up and down there at Tottenham, and it's an agony. God bless the Europa League. Spurs will kick off the quarter-final tie against Frankfurt this Thursday. We'll go deeper on that one again in the European Nights podcast, which comes out tomorrow. We'll also talk about one of these teams, Brentford 0, Chelsea 0. Very forgettable stalemate of a West London derby in which the Bees, I think they'd lost 7 straight at home, frustrated Chelsea, who made a bold move to rest Cole Palmer, Nico Jackson and Cucurella on the bench with European Conference League priorities incoming. A missed opportunity, really, because Fulham, Everton, Liverpool, Newcastle are in 4 of the next 5 games, so there's real tussles to come, and they are fighting to make this top 5. But big picture, we've got to talk about this Chelsea story from the week. Absurd finances. In the perpetual search for a brighter tomorrow. News came out last week that Clearlake, the Chelsea owners, are obsessed with lowering the wage bill, all while blowing fortunes on the perma shuffle of a transfer market. And we discovered that huge losses this week have been offset by essentially finding loopholes in the Premier League's profitability and sustainability rules. News broke, this is true, that essentially Chelsea balanced their books by selling their women's team, wait for it, to themselves to comply with PSR. Accounts released on Friday indicated that the sale to Chelsea's parent company, Blueco 22, by the way, you may remember they sold 2 hotels at Stamford Bridge to Blueco 22. Everyone needs a Blueco 22 in their life. They sold the women's team for $257 million to themselves. Rory, is this what football is now? And why does it feel so dirty? Because UEFA rules don't allow that kind of loophole. So that's going to be interesting how that's handled. But is this now why we watch?
I think to an extent it's subsumed into the drama, isn't it? That football has this amazing ability to turn everything into part of the storyline, and that is kind of why we like it, because it becomes this all-encompassing soap opera that we can follow, even when it makes no sense and even when it's deeply frustrating. I think, look, this is really obvious. Like, Chelsea can't keep finding stuff to sell to themselves to overcome their ridiculous behaviour in the transfer market. That's the long and the short of it. They've done it with the hotels, fine. They got away with that one. They've done it with the women's team. It looks like they certainly won't get away with that one on a UEFA level, even if they do somehow manage to sort of bluff it through the Premier League. And that's fine. It's all kind of accounting chicanery. Well done, round of applause. There's going to come a point where you run out of things to pull that trick with, where you can't sell the under 21s to yourself for
you just sell Blueco 22 to Blueco 23,
or I don't know, you sell the image rights of the players of all the squad to another company that you also own. There is a point at which either you can't think of any vehicles to do that with, or the need to have real world money trumps the imaginary accounting world money that you're playing with. It's all very well making it look good on the books, but there's a point where you actually need money to run the business. And those two things aren't the same. And I think it's really strange to think that anybody could look at the way Chelsea have behaved and think, this is really smart ownership. Because it fairly obviously isn't.
Talking about smart ownership, West Ham 2, Bournemouth to, oh, God bless my Golden War cherries. Honestly, they've got a new leitmotif to their season, which is a miserable art of conceding leads and letting their opponent back into the game. Took it here, handed it back. Nice to see actually Nicholas Fulkrug be a real difference maker. Find his header if you've not seen it from this. It was dictionary definition. Jared Bowen's first goal in 5 games at home made it 2-1 before Ev Nielsen tied it up. Not much progress got to be said for the Hammers under Graham Potter. They remain in 16th place, but it's been quite an agonising 6 weeks for beautiful, beautiful Bournemouth. It was only 6 weeks ago that they seemed unbeatable, no matter how many injuries, no matter who they were facing. I think they've won 2 points in their last 18. They were knocked out of the FA Cup by Man City. I just spent lots of time there last week, met so many fans, so many players. It is incredible, the energy there. This is a place where even the kids, speaking to fans, they were like, when I was a kid, I was a weirdo in my class for supporting Bournemouth. Everybody supported big teams, United, City, Liverpool. But now, Bournemouth were like a minor league, an insignificant kind of baseball team that were local. But now they're roaring, and you see Bournemouth jerseys everywhere in that town. They just opened up a $48 million training ground, which was humanly magnificent, under American owner Bill Foley. There really is a surging optimism there, but it's a young squad. Many of the players not used to being in this spotlight. Transfer rumours, Semenyo, Kirkes, the quite unbelievable Dean Howson, performing alchemy for Andoni Irola's one thing, Raw. Sustaining it is proving to be altogether a different one. I do pray for them. That tiny stadium, 11,000, a club who almost went bankrupt, were in the bowels of English football even until the early 2000s. For them to reach Europe, any level, Europa, the Conference League, for me, it would be the story of the season if it happened.
Yeah, absolutely. And the Conference League looks perfect for them. I think that would be ideal for Bournemouth, not least as it would give them a chance of winning it. They'd go into that as one of the favourites automatically. I wonder whether this is all deliberate, if I'm honest, that they looked at it kind of mid-March and thought, OK, look, it would be great to get in the Champions League. That's obviously incredible money. It'd be great exposure for the club. But we don't really need it. It'd be enough just to be in Europe. And also, we really don't want to lose Andoni Iraola to Spurs. So what if we're rubbish for 6 weeks and all the kind of hype dies down a little bit? Maybe Thomas Frank gets that job, or Marco Silva. Maybe Marco Silva will beat Liverpool and get the Spurs job. And we get to keep Andoni Iraola for another year. And I just wonder if it's another part of the 4D chess.
God, this is amazing. Like, Tessa the D'Urbervilles, when she shaves off her eyebrows so she becomes less attractive to other human beings. Is that what you're talking about? Exactly.
This is Bournemouth shaving their eyebrows.
Yeah, do it. Do it, America. Ipswich 1. Wolverhampton Wanderers 2. Rip Ipswich in a game known around the world as the Ipswich security guards broken glasses revenge game. Oh, take that. As I imagine the Ipswich players before the game, like William Wallace screaming Scotland forever as he goes into battle. I like to believe the Ipswich players looked at each other and said, let's do it for our security guys, bifocals, Raw. And they did. They were adrift, but they clipped Bournemouth midweek and entered this. We tried to tell ourselves it was a relegation 6 points, especially when Rory Delap did his thing. It's his 12th goal of the season in the 16th minute. It looked like Kieran McKenna was going to pull off. It was Steve McQueen level great escapes. He'd like, God, put Ipswich in the cooler, getting out the cooler. God, we love you with that baseball mitt and the ball, but it ended very much like that movie in Machine Gun Climax. First of all, let's talk about the happy highlight. When the entire Ipswich team lined up on the goal line to block an indirect free kick, which was like 4 or 5 yards out, Wolves ended up blasting it off Ipswich Sam Morsey. Raw. Is an indirect free kick on the goal line now kind of one of the many electric moments that we'll have to treasure for the rest of this season? Do we need more indirect free kicks 4 or 5 yards out to keep this season interesting? Hawks and free kicks.
Do you know what? It's a great example, though, isn't it? Rarity. It's the preciousness of rarity. Did you see it so infrequently that it's weird and fascinating and intriguing, and you want to see more of it? But then the natural kind of journey for football there is to produce a surfeit, like a glut of these things, and suddenly we're like, this is boring, and I'm sick of seeing these these free kicks on the goal line. It's terrible. But for now, they're these wonderful, precious, occasional treats that that are surprisingly difficult to score from. I don't know what the best thing to do is there. Do you just try and chip it really gently above all the players' heads? Because it's really hard to jump from a standing start, isn't it? Like one of those whack-a-mole things. You'd be doing like that, kind of up and down to try and do it. That feels like the best way to score in that situation. But it's hard. It's indirect. You can't do it.
GFOP Burn It Down tweeted us and said it's like the English tush push, which I love. I'm just sorry we've not seen Arsenal do one, because I bet you Nicholas Jova trains at them. He's got some.
He'll have 70 up his sleeve on his 70 different patterns.
He's got one move where Jorginho spins around and fires it home out of his anus. Something that you just do not expect, and it will be. Yeah, I think I've just given it away. I'm sorry, Arsenal fans, when that happens and it doesn't work, it's on me. Second half, Wolves won the game, brought on Spaniard Pablo Sarabia in the 65th minute, scored one, created one. God bless Wolves, who've won 3 on the bounce now under Vitor Pereira. Incredible turnaround. We talked about that last week. 4 points from safety when he arrived. They now have a 12-point gap between them and the doomed relegation zone, where Ipswich are. And it does feel like it's a bit of a farewell to one of the cuddlier seasons in Premier League history. Kieran McKenna said post-game, the likelihood is we'll fall short of our ultimate dream. I've loved watching them. They have dropped 25 points from winning positions this season, which has been an agony. So many of the conversations were already turning to who will be back. Will Liam Delap, scored 38% of the goals this season, stick around? Almost certainly not. Can they retain the mighty McKenna, who's led this great tractor revolution, bringing them up from League One all the way from the top flight in back-to-back seasons? Probably. But for you, Raw, based on what you've seen this season, do you think Ipswich will immediately be favourites to come right back up? Or is this now the new model for true Premier League existence? Come up, go down, get the parachute payments, consolidate, come back with a stronger foundation, up, down, up, down, up, down.
I think the ideal is that you come up, you take the money from the one season in the Premier League, you probably sell your 2 or 3 players who've really excelled. So in Ipswich's case, that would be Liam Delap particularly. For 40 or 50 million pounds. You get this huge pot of cash. You reinvest some of it in the team, so you have an exceptional, like a really strong championship team that is designed to be a little bit more hardware and a little bit more enduring when it goes back to the Premier League. I think the problem is if you don't do it immediately, you're then met by another 3 teams coming down who are all doing exactly the same thing. So I think the plan for Ipswich will be, it's okay, they came up, they didn't expect to come up necessarily, they came up faster than they'd maybe anticipated. They've not disgraced themselves by any stretch of the imagination. You come up, you take the money, you go down, you strengthen, you consolidate, you rebuild, and you go again. They will go into next season thinking that their target has to be getting promoted again. The one little caveat is look at what's happened to Luton Town.
Why do you have to leave us like that? I do believe there will be enough money, enough support, enough strategy there that Ipswich, please God, because I love that team. I love that town. I love that whole area. Will rise again. In other games, Crystal Palace 2, Brighton 1. Behold, the M23 rivalry. Known for the motorway that links these two sworn to the death, blood foes, a game filled with real hate. Even though, honestly, this is fascinating. There's so many reasons given as to why this became so spite-filled that there's almost no one real reason, which is what is so great about hate, right, Raw? Doesn't always need one proper reason.
It doesn't need any reason at all, to be honest. It can just be made up on the spot. But the fact that hate is genuine is witnessed by what happened in this game, right?
Oh, God bless. Yeah, by the way, I once made a film on the source of the hate, and no one there could give it. They all had many reasons, and they all felt them, but it was like different reason for everyone, which I just adore. And I think this game will be another layer like snow falling on snow. The football was bright. Informed Palace are a delight. FA Cup semi-final incoming. They won here via Daniel Munoz's winner off the bum of a Stupian, which edged the game following Danny Welbeck's bright finish, cancel out Jean-Philippe Mateta's 13th Premier League goal of the season. Godspeed to JPM. Football was cohesive, elbows were sharp, and Ketcher got, well done to you, Eddie. 2 yellows in 10 minutes. Mark Gahey steamed in, fairly unnecessarily to Gruder of what used to be called a reducer. He saw red, and then Van Hecker got his second yellow. 3 men off, 3 goals. Palace become the second team in Premier League history to win a match after being reduced to 9 players on the field. Seagulls, the latest team to have their Champions League dreams take a good kicking in the down belows. 3 agonising losses inside 1 week for them. For Palace, Raw, this was a first league double against Brighton since 1932-33 in the 3rd Division South. It's 92 years ago. I think Roy Hodgson was just 13 years old then. That's what this game had it all. It's what the people want, Ro.
Imagine how good Palace would be if they started playing before December.
Yeah, I mean, that's it. If they were the they're always having the yin to Liverpool season, you mean?
They're the like opposite forces, yeah. Maybe that's what it is. Maybe they meet on the last day of the season, Rog. Maybe it's all written in the stars.
God, you bolt on Palace's end to Liverpool's beginning, and you'd have like Manchester City Centurion season. Is that what you're saying?
I think that's ultimately, yes, just maths.
Leicester Newcastle is this afternoon. God bless Rude. Van Nistelrooy looking to build on his 7 losses in a row record. We wish him well in that one. Keep building. Believe in yourself, Rude. Do what you do. Which brings us to Saturday morning early doors. Everton won. Arsenal won. Real strange feeling going into this. I wanted Everton to win so badly. My default settings of 4th to last game ever at Goodison. Wanted them to do Arsenal, but also knew that to do Arsenal would really just be a win for Liverpool.
Yeah, it's a mixed emotion for Everton, isn't it, really, when that knowledge that whatever they did against Arsenal would help bring about the one thing they don't want to happen. But I do think there's an extra special pride for Everton in these last few games at Goodison. I think that the players are conscious of that as much as I'm sure there were lots of people texting them the night before the game, telling them to lose to Arsenal, just in case Liverpool blew it. I think the Everton players, and to an extent some of the fans, know you kind of want to bow out from Goodison in a little bit of glory.
So proud of watching the Everton fans revel in every single moment there. It is gorgeous. Sun was out. I love this comment from GFOP at Minimatty829 who tweeted us, I always get confused when I watch a Premier League game played in broad daylight. David Moyes looks like he shouldn't exist outside the most dreary of days. Which I just love. David Moyes was definitely made to stand tall in the rain. Here he faced an Arsenal team whose minds must have been on the oncoming Champions League game against Real Madrid. Starting lineup, no Ødegaard, no Saka, reflected that. Well, very quick one on Arsenal. They've just lost defensive king Gabriel for the rest of the season to hamstring surgery, like Bukayo Saka and Kai Havertz, who both suffered the same malady. Many Arsenal fans I know are getting medical degrees just so they can work out why so many of these are occurring to their team. How do you understand it? Is it too many minutes? Is it the grind of international travel? Just the brutality of that every 3-day schedule? Intensity of the modern game? Firmness of training pitches? The boots they wear? The pies? What is it, Rule?
So I think the schedule is a big factor. The intensity of the modern game is a big factor. The travel, it must be in there somewhere. The fact that it's been going on for sort of 3 seasons with Arsenal now, that they are kind of at the peak of a cycle, maybe that these players have been playing constantly, every 3 days for some time. The other thing that I'm starting to wonder is whether we are due a little bit of a reckoning in terms of the style of the Premier League. That Arsenal have been really intense. That was what brought them so close to the title in the last 2 seasons. It's what Mikel Arteta tried to do to win the league this season, is that kind of intense style. And I do wonder whether Liverpool, who should finish above them, are kind of an avatar for working out a way to turn that lever down a little bit. Because those games are so intense, you can't hit them all head on.
Oh, God, yeah, I mean, it is interesting. Nottingham Forest, lowest percentage of possession in the league, lowest number of injuries, risk correlation. Also interesting to watch Arteta talk about Gabriel, that he kind of brought it on himself, saying that he, had a grade 1 tear, tried to play with that, kept trying to play when he wasn't fit, trying to distance himself and the club from that injury. But God bless this game. We toiled, we snapped, felt a bit pre-season, to be honest. Then Arsenal, stunning move, full length of the field. Raheem Sterling carrying forward, Trossard nutmegging O'Brien with a low left foot magic shot. Strange goal, got to be honest. Everton conceded, but it wasn't even salty. It was just irrational and the emotional, a lot of cognitive dissonance. Everton didn't muster a shot on target in the first half. We scored off our first one in the second. Slightly dodgy penalty award, but we'll take it. Everton's second penalty only of the season. And God, I love that man, so lethal. At the end, Peter Drury said, a very Moyesian point, and he was right. A point with the joy of holding Arsenal, and then that tinge stain of knowing you'd help Liverpool in that title race. I was reading some Anne Rice midweek, and she wrote, I think to be this happy is to be miserable. To feel this much satisfaction is to burn. That's how I felt at the end of this one. I do tell myself about Everton, we're just saving ourselves for the Premier League Summer Series. That's our big one. Arsenal, really missed opportunity with Liverpool's result, but they charged towards that dance of death with Real Madrid. I want to say I root for you, Arsenal fans, so very much. You deserve joy. You just know that they're going to raise hope with a really good first leg performance and probably somehow tragically get done in that second leg. Rob, can I very quickly tell you one thing that annoys me so much though about Arsenal? It's the way they've claimed Mikel Arteta as an Arsenal legend. I went on Arseblog before this game. We talked about it. Arteta had 209 appearances for Everton, 35 goals, 35 assists. For Arsenal, 150 appearances, 16 goals, 8 assists. It's like Arsenal claiming him from it. It's like Britain claiming like the Elgin Marbles or some other country claiming Greenland. How do they do that, Raw?
Especially because Arteta spent the prime of his career at Everton.
We saved him too.
I think of him as being an Everton player who went and had a kind of winter romance, like a May to December thing with Arsenal.
Yeah,
he was an experienced player at Arsenal. Mikel Arteta's prime years were at Everton. That is indisputable fact.
Yeah, he talked about his kids being Scousers. He was Tim Cahill's best man. Come back to us, Mikel. Come back to us. That is how you win the league. I'm getting a bit carried away. It is time. Let's go to your letters. Our mailbag floweth over this week. So many delicious photos, I've got to say, of your dogs that you've named after footballers. Kevin Hartel wrote, hello gents, wanted to share a picture of Thierry Henry. My girlfriend and I typically call him Titi. He's a grey Siamese cat. I hope you and Rory don't discriminate against cats. I want to say, Kevin Hartel, we are a big tent pet podcast. Send them all our way. Dogs, cats, parakeets, gerbils, enormous San Francisco baseball-loving rabbits, whatever you've named after a footballer, send them to the usual portal, meninblazers@gmail.com. But Raw, this letter made me very happy. Do the honours, please.
Rog and Rory. I've been a long-time listener of the network, and the latest FA Cup episode, ending with a conversation about naming pets after favourite players, hit home for me. I was born in 1990 and caught on to the Premier League when coverage in America was in its early days and mostly featuring the likes of the great Manchester United teams. Younger listeners, that does actually make sense. Long story short, this is a cautionary tale. My wife and I adopted a black lab puppy 7 years ago, and it was her suggestion to name him Giggs, knowing how much of a fan I was of the club legend, and she thought Giggsy sounded cute. It did, and still does. But Rog, I heard you say the only way to name your pet after your favourite footballer and avoid disappointment was to go with a retired player. And I'm here to remind you that football and disappointment are part and parcel of the journey. Just when you think the player's career is finished, they'll do something in their personal life to sour their legacy. It's too late to change our dog's name, but luckily we live in such a remote town, devoid of long-standing footy fanatics, that you're more likely to find someone mispronouncing Giggs as Jigs than someone who realises the full backstory of his namesake's misdoings. Anyway, here's a picture of our playful pup who can run the left flank as well as anyone, and we pray will prove to have the same longevity at our club as Ryan once did. Cheers and courage from Ben in Indian Lake, New York.
I love this. Oh my God, people in Indian Lake, New York, you have no idea of the horror that poor Ben of Indian Lake, New York is experiencing on the regs. It could be worse, Ben. You could have named your dog like Luis Rubiales or like Woody Allen or Jeffrey Epstein, Raw. But that is a tough one to carry, right, Rory Smith?
Yeah, I mean, it's not quite Epstein levels, but I mean, Ryan Giggs is not, he's not the idol he once was, I'd say. I think probably just safer not to name your... What's wrong with Rover?
What are you... I had a very beautiful dog. We've talked about him, Tony Hibbert. Tony Hibbert only in retirement burnished his legacy by appearing on the front of Trout Fishing magazine with a very large fish.
That's all very well and good for now, Rog, but time keeps ticking, the world keeps turning. what darkness lurked in Tony Hibbert's soul.
Are you saying I don't want to know what Tony Hibbert did with that fish after the photo shoot?
At some point, there's going to be something about someone digging up something in Tony Hibbert's garden.
Is it wrong for a man to really love a fish in that way? I think it's beautiful.
It's not wrong. No, I think with Tony Hibbert you're probably safe. But yeah, Ryan Giggs is not a great name for a dog.
Right, I don't know what to tell you, Ben. I can't tell. When I read this, I did think that old cliche, never meet your heroes. There is a version of that for you, which is actually not true because I've met so many of mine. And apart from Tracy Chapman, who is still the one and only, the great white whale, I do want to. I've met so many: Noah Khan, Magnus Carlsen, Brene Brown, Beto, David Moyes, Sir David Moyes. I will say it is enriching to meet these human beings. I think the life lesson, Raw, is never name your dog after your hero. That's probably a truth. Huh?
Yeah, or do a full due diligence check on everything all of the time.
I think that's the only way. Get on it. Get a due diligence. Go deep. Get into the dark web of due diligence levels before you name your pups. Benjamin Conroy, I loved your letter. Huge love to Giggsy, which you do probably get trying to spread the word. It's Jigsy. It's not his fault. Keep sending your letters and your questions for Rory and me, and especially your dog and cat images and backstories, because we love them. They bring such bloody joy to us in a ridiculously dark time. meninblazers@gmail.com is the address. That's it for today. I'm off to Liverpool for a couple of days at the end of this week. Spend some time with my lovely mum Val. Have my family try and lift up as we approach the first holidays without my dad. I will write to you on newsletter. Subscribe now. I'll write to you from there. Subscribe via our website. But I want you to know every letter you send to us at meninblazers@gmail.com lifts our spirits to better days ahead. Huge love to all you Villa and Arsenal fans in these epic Champions League nights to come. Raw and I will break them down tomorrow on European night. I'm going to tape with Wrexham King, Ollie Rathbone. As I said, that will come out imminently. We've got a whole lot of Bournemouth tapings to present to you. We shot some really beautiful stuff there, I will say, in Cherryland, and I can't wait for you to see it. We are 430 days from World Cup 2026, but who's counting? Let's savour each and every one. Raw, huge love to you, you Crown Prince of Harrogate.
It's been a pleasure.
These are dark days. Just look after each other. Roberto Boliano wrote, as time goes by, the whip crack of the years, the precipice of illusions, the ravine that swallows up all human endeavour, except the struggle to survive. And on that note, it's Rog sending you big love. Let's not take a second of watching football together for granted. Courage.